I walk through each day with a state of gratitude, and that gratitude belongs to you. Your dedication, teamwork, and commitment have given me the time in my life to do whatever good I can do in the world. I feel as though my life has been saved, and this is incumbent on me to show up and do the best I can because of the work you do. My journey began 13 years ago. I was a regular blood donor. When I was 58 years old, I went to give blood, and they did the little finger prick before, and the blood, instead of sinking to the bottom, rose to the top of the solution. And I was told that I was anemic and that I should see my physician. Well, I felt fine, so I went home, and 3 months later, I went back to give blood, and once again, I was told that I was anemic. So I made an appointment with my general physician, and she did some blood work and recommended a diet rich in iron-rich food and over-the-counter iron supplements with all their horrible side effects, which I took religiously. After my counts did not go down at all, my doctor suggested that I see a hematologist. I found someone who came highly recommended, and I went to see him and had the same results, the iron-rich foods and the medications, and still there was no improvement. So at one point, he suggested a bone marrow biopsy. And I, in my arrogance and ignorance, said, "Do you think I have leukemia?" And he said, "No, I don't think you have leukemia." And I said, "Well, you know what? I feel great, I'm living my life, and I don't think that I need to go through this." So foolishly, I stopped seeing him as well. Well, at a later physical exam, my yearly physical exam, my doctor said that my levels were unacceptable at this point and said that I really must see a hematologist. So I chose another hematologist that was nearer to my home and went through the same thing, injections and food, and finally he too suggested I have a bone marrow biopsy. So I agreed to do it. It was a very unpleasant experience. I was brought into a cubicle, my pants were lowered in the back, I was given injections of a numbing agent, the door was left open, and I was lying there on my stomach for 30 minutes. The doctor came in and did the procedure, which was uncomfortable. Later, my husband had a bone marrow biopsy done, and he was put out. I don't know why I was chosen to, do it this way, but that's what it was. So a few weeks later, I received a call from his office saying that the results of the test have come in, and would I make an appointment? So I went in, and it was so strange to walk down the hall, and it seemed as though doctors and nurses were peeking out of their cubicles at me as I went down. When I met with the doctor, he told me that I have a very rare genetic disease called Gaucher's, and that he had a wonderful treatment plan where he was going to be treating me with hemoglobin-raising injections that are often used for cancer patients, and this was going to help me. So when I returned home, my husband and I started researching this Gaucher's disease, and we discovered the hereditary factors. And since our ancestors were from Ashkenazi Jews from the area of Hungary, Poland, and Russia, it seemed logical that this would be what it was. I learned about the genetic factors. It was interesting because we tried to figure out which of my parents may have been affected by Gaucher's. Our mother had to have her spleen removed before surgery because she had a chronically low platelet count. Our father had a distended stomach where they said that his stomach was filled with blood after he died. My uncle had a pernicious anemia, so we never really knew who in our family was affected by the Gaucher's. I partially blame myself for what happened next. I cannot only blame the doctor. We all researched the causes and the genetic factors and how the disease manifested itself, but somehow my doctor and myself did not go far enough to see that there was a way to treat this condition. I started treatment with this doctor the next week. I was given injections every other week of medications that were given, as I said, to cancer patients to help raise levels. When nothing was happening, another drug was tried. And then one day, I received a bill from my insurance company for $500. And I said, what? Because so far, everything had been covered. So I called the doctor's office, and they said that since nothing had been working, he changed medication, and this drug was not covered by insurance. Well, in a panic, my husband suggested we called our brother-in-law, who was a very well-known physician in the Boston area. So I spoke with him and told him my diagnosis, and I talked to him about how I was being treated. He was appalled. He asked if I knew what he was doing. And I said, well, you've always had a private practice. He said, I've given up my private practice, and I'm now employed at the Genzyme Genetics lab in Ulster, Massachusetts, outside Boston. And we make the only treatment for Gaucher's. And then, and then he gave me the best advice I ever had. He gave me the number for the Genzyme network in Boston. I called and discovered this amazing network. I was assigned a case manager who came to my home within days. We sat and talked, and he told me about the support services that I now had. If I talk loud, can you hear me? He helped me connect with a physician who was familiar with Gaucher's, Dr. Raul Castillo, who works he works walking distance from my home, which is lovely. He treats most of the Gaucher's patients in Central Florida. He is the kindest, most approachable, most sympathetic doctor I've ever worked with. He is a hematologist oncologist. He immediately had me go for an MRI of my spleen, my liver, and the femur. And he too diagnosed the Gaucher's, but he knew how to treat it. We decided on a treatment plan. He wanted to start a treatment immediately, as my counts were very low. But our daughter was going to be married in Asheville, North Carolina in 2 weeks' time, and I was frightened of suffering side effects during that weekend. So he agreed to let me wait, and then as soon as I got home, I began treatment. I began treatment 12 years ago, and within months, my counts had begun to come up. My counts began to come up. Obviously, my condition is in the bone marrow, preventing the normal production of red blood cells. I have been able, because of this treatment, because of the work you do, to lead a full life. After my diagnosis and speaking with my team, I contacted my children and my brother and my sister. Due to our genetic pattern, our children are carriers. Neither our son-in-law nor our daughter-in-law come from this ancestry, so we're not eager to be tested. However, when our daughter-in-law and son were thinking about having their first child, they both underwent genetic testing, and my son does not have Gaucher's. My daughter and her husband have chosen not to have children, so they were not concerned about passing this on. My brother recommended that his children be tested. 3 years ago, when he was 74 years old, I was speaking with my brother, and he told me that he had a health problem. My brother is an incredibly active man. He maintains 2 homes, doing most of the yard work and gardening himself. In the summer, he runs, he plays golf, he plays tennis, he fishes. In the winter, at 77 years old, he is still a ski instructor on the mountain near his home. But he told me that his condition was that the doctors had noticed that his spleen and liver were enlarged. He said, and they did not know what it was. I said, I know what it is. And I told him to get tested for Gaucher. And of course, he too has this condition. His doctor told him he had not even heard the term Gaucher since he was in medical school and had never treated anyone with this condition. Initially, the only doctor he could find was a pediatric neurosurgeon. I could just see him sitting in those little chairs and waiting with all these children. After a few months, his doctor was not seeing any progress in the size of his spleen and liver and discussed using a different treatment approach. My brother was put off by the possibility of the side effects that were cited to him. And he spoke with me, and I said, please come and see Dr. Castillo. So Dr. Castillo agreed to see him as soon as he could fly in from Boston. They met and went through his treatment plan, and my brother left feeling comfortable with the treatment that he was doing. He has now been in treatment for 2 years and is living a full life with no change in the things that he does and the things that he can do. Here are the effects that Gaucher has had on my life. After teaching kindergarten for 35 years, I retired, and now I feel it's my turn to give back. 22 years ago, our 16-year-old daughter was killed by a drunk driver. My husband and I discovered an incredible international support group called Compassionate Friends. We attended meetings. This is a group for parents, grandparents, and siblings who have lost, adult siblings who have lost children. We attended faithfully, and we truly believe this organization is what got us through the grief that follows this kind of incident. For the past 10 years, my husband and I have been the co-leaders of the Orlando chapter of Compassionate Friends. After our daughter's death, Rebecca's friends would come to our home. They would sit in her room and cry after school. They would ask if they could have a pair of her socks, or my daughter had a beaded curtain in her doorway, and they would take beads. Some of them still have them on their rearview mirrors of their cars. But to see them crying and sad, there was nothing we could give them. We were drained. But every day when I drove to school, I passed a beautiful Victorian house that had a sign that said, New Hope for Kids, the Center for Grieving Children. I went in and spoke with the director and found out that this was a place for children who have lost parents, siblings, grandparents, friends, anyone that they loved. She said this would be a great place for my daughter's friends to come. And 3 of them attended New Hope for Kids, and it just was an amazing help. She also said that when I was ready, she thought that this would be a good place for me. And 2 years after Rebecca's death, I went to New Hope for Kids and trained as a grief facilitator. For the last 20 years, I've been working with children on a weekly basis to help them get through the pain that they feel. We work with groups of children from 3 to 6, there are littles, from 7 to 12 are the middles, and from 13 to 18 are the teens. It is unbelievable to see these children come in broken and frightened and angry, and after a year, at no charge, they leave happy and confident and ready to rejoin their friends and rejoin their life and create their lives. 2 years ago, I was honored by the International Organization of Grieving Children with the Volunteer of the Year Award. My husband and I were flown to Austin, Texas, and my sister, who's here with me today, drove in from Houston, and I was given this award. It's very strange. It was a very strange feeling to me to be awarded for doing something that I love and that is so rewarding and that fills me. So it was a great honor, and I felt very humble. With 2 fellow teachers who are retired, I volunteer at a local middle school. I live in the Orlando area, right here. We do a Shakespeare drama club. Every year, our children who sign up do a huge Shakespeare comedy, and they just love it. We have about 200 people in the audience, parents, teachers, other children. The goal of this, as much as a production, is to create a family and a sense of teamwork in these very often confused middle school children. We have children in our group that are athletes wearing $300 sneakers, and we have kids that are a step above homeless. But we work to create a sense of team and family. At the end of the year, we ask what they feel they got out of Shakespeare Club. And they say things like, I never eat lunch alone anymore. Or I walk down the hall and people say hello. And I feel like I have a family. And that's our goal. Teamwork and family, and secondarily is our Shakespearean productions. I volunteer as a Gaucher's patient with the Michael J. Fox Parkinson's disease study. I was contacted as a patient a few years ago and asked if I would be part of the study because data had shown that some people with Gaucher's also have the markers for Parkinson's. Since my friend's mother died of this terrible disease, I said I would be glad to participate. I did a DNA test and I do not have the markers, thankfully, but I said I would gladly join this study. I asked where in Florida I would go for this, and I was told that I would be going to New Haven, Connecticut twice a year. And so twice a year I go to New Haven and I'm tested. They take a lot of blood. I do blood work and cognitive testing and physical testing and just a gamut of things. And I'm hoping that in some tiny way that I can be part of the solution to Parkinson's disease. I mention these activities not for kudos or accolades or applause. I mention them because without you, these small contributions that I make would never have been made. Had I continued to be treated incorrectly or had my condition not been diagnosed, I would not have been able to participate in life fully. These are my small way of paying back for the privilege of being able to live with Gaucher's and not die from it, as countless people have done before me and countless people still do because of lack of diagnosis. I give the credit for my life and the life of my brother to the team that helped me navigate my treatment. The kindness, compassion, and assistance I received treated my mind as well as my body. The visits over lunch, the phone calls, and the educational meetings all assured me that I was not alone. The number of people saved by you, by this organization, and the good deeds, whatever deeds they have done in the world, are the result of the work you do. And I can never thank you enough. Thank you.